Okay friends, it's time to get started on our rear brakes. To do that, you're going to want to safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. After that, remove all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. With the wheel off of there, we have a nice clear view of the brakes. To start disassembling this, we're going to come right over to the caliper. Inside of the caliper, there's a piston that expands and applies pressure to the rotor by the brake pads. We want to go ahead and push back that piston so we can get it out of the way. I'm going to come right in between this area, in between the caliper and the bracket itself. While I pry this, it's going to slowly start pushing in that piston. We only need it to go in a little bit, and then we can continue once it's all apart. Now from the back side of the caliper, you're going to find 2 14mm headed bolts. Let's go ahead and remove the pair. For the first one, I always just loosen it up and leave it in a couple threads, then fully remove the second. As you remove each of the bolts, give them a quick inspection. Assuming they look good, set them aside. Now we can carefully take the caliper out of the area. Once you have it off of there, you want to give it a quick inspection, especially along the area where the piston is. If you see any fluid in this area, that means it's brake fluid and your caliper is no good. Let's go ahead and push this piston back as far as we can. Typically you do that with a caliper compression tool. Now once we have this fully compressed, we're just going to double check to make sure we still don't have any fluid. At this point, we know the caliper should be good, so we can set it aside. Let's remove the pads using a pry bar. I always give them a quick inspection just to see how they're wearing. If they're wearing at an angle, typically that means you're having an issue with one of the slider pins. With all that out of the way, we can continue on to removing the caliper bracket from the area. To do that, you're going to find 2 more 14mm headed bolts. Go ahead and remove the pair. Give both of your bolts a quick inspection. Assuming they look good, set them aside. Now we can also remove the bracket. Now let's go ahead and take one of our lug nuts. We're going to start it on here a few good threads. Continuing on with a hammer, we're going to give this a loving bonk to try to break it free from the wheel bearing. Remove the lug nut. And then the rotor. Now with the rotor out of the way, let's give the emergency brake shoes a quick inspection. Make sure they still look like they're good. If not, now's the time to replace them. The next thing that we're going to do is move along to cleaning up our hub area. This is the area that the rotor is going to be sitting directly against, so it needs to be clean and free of any debris. Once you have the main surface cleaned up, don't forget about the area in between the lug studs and the center of the hub. It's just as important to make sure you clean each of these 5 areas. Let's use some parts cleaner on the area. Once you feel as though it's sufficiently cleaned, go ahead and coat the area with some copper never seize. Double check to make sure you don't have any on your emergency brake shoes. Let's go ahead and clean all 3 braking surfaces on our rotor. I'm going to spray this outer aspect. And wipe that down. Now we can turn it around, and then we'll also clean the inner braking surface. Now we can get ready to put on our rotor. Before we do, I wanted you to take a quick look at the hub. Looking at it, you're going to find two areas that have threaded holes. On the brake rotor, we have those dimples. Essentially, that's where there should be bolts that hold this to the hub behind it. So we want to make sure we have everything lined up. A quick note about the brake rotors, you're going to notice in the set, one faces one direction and the other faces the opposite. Looking at this, you can tell the exact direction that it's supposed to rotate. Now that we have it on here, the next thing that you would want to do, if you have them, you would put in each of these two screws and make sure they're tight. After that, we're going to pay attention to this hole right here. This is the adjustment port. All I want to do is turn this so it's facing down in the downward position right here. Then we'll take a nice small screwdriver, we can come right in here, and we're going to grab onto that cog. The cog is how you make your adjustments. So if you go one direction, once you're up against it and start pulling down, it's going to adjust it up or adjust the shoes out. And if you go in the other direction, it's going to start bringing them in. So if it feels like you can grab this and you can spin it all willy-nilly and it doesn't have any resistance, typically you want to adjust it out a little bit until you can just barely hear the shoes touching the rotor. If you try to turn it and it doesn't want to turn, well, that's not a good thing. What you're going to have to do is go ahead and line this up and de-adjust it so you have just barely a tiny bit of drag coming from this area. Let's remove the rotor so you can see what I'm talking about. Once you feel as though you have it fully adjusted, go ahead and reinsert your rubber plug. Now we can move along to talking about the caliper bracket itself. We're going to have to remove everything from it so we can clean. To do that, I'm going to use a screwdriver, carefully get in between the tin and the caliper, and gently pry it away. We'll give those an inspection, set them aside. After that, you want to remove each of your caliper slider pins. Just go ahead and grab onto it. You're going to give it a little twist and pull it out and away. Once you have it off of there, I always remove the boot from the pin as well. To do that, just put it on a bench, grab onto that boot, and carefully pull it down. Now, once you have the boot off of there, we're going to take a quick look at the pin. We'll clean this down and take a closer look in a second. First, let's talk about the boot. Now for the boot, you want to make sure that it's nice and soft and pliable. It doesn't look like it's torn or worn or damaged in any way. We're just going to take a rag, put it through the center of this, essentially just to remove the dirt, debris, or even old grease from the area. Inspect it, make sure it's still in good condition. We'll set that aside. Now we can clean the caliper slider pin. We'll just give it a quick spray with some parts cleaner, wipe it down. Now let's further the inspection. The areas that you want to pay attention to are the entire shaft of the slider. It needs to be smooth and clean and free of any debris. You don't want anything binding this up inside of the caliper bracket. After that, make your way up to this area and clean this groove as well. All right, that looks a lot better. Now at this point, I would do the exact same thing on the other side of the bracket. This is looking great. Now we can continue on to cleaning the rest of our bracket. Looking at it, you can see I have a lot of rust buildup on it. I like to generally try to scrape off as much of it as possible. Once I have it scraped down, the next areas that I'm going to pay attention to are each of these areas where those tins were riding. Essentially, you want to make sure you get along this ridge right here, and the same on this side as well. Once you've completed cleaning one side, go ahead and turn the bracket over and do the exact same thing. Now once you have both of these sides cleaned, the next thing you want to do is turn the caliper bracket over and make sure you clean in between this area as well. That's the area that the rotor is going to be riding between, so there can't be any rot buildup. Now let's move along to cleaning the slider ports. Give it a quick rinse. Now we'll just give it another quick inspection as it dries, and then we can continue on with some caliper lubricant. Let's take some of that caliper grease. We're going to come right inside this caliper slider port. It's important to make sure you get all the way down near the very end of this because there is a groove there that the boot needs to sit inside. If you were to look at it, you can see that it has a ridge right along this area. That ridge needs to fit in there. So we'll just take it from an angle, start sliding it in. Slide that in there. Just give it a little spin to make sure it's completely situated. Do the same on the other side. Let's continue with that caliper grease. We're going to coat the entire shaft of each of the slider pins. Also, when we're doing this, you want to make your way all the way down into that lower groove that I talked to you about. It's very important to make sure you have lubricant in this area to help keep moisture and debris out. Slide that right into the caliper. There we are. Now typically I just squeeze out any air that's in there. Make sure it functions properly. Do the exact same thing on the other side. Now let's apply a thin amount of lubricant on each of these ears. We'll take those tins, we're going to slide them into position, lock it in by grabbing in the center where the rotor would be and pressing up. Do the same on both sides. Let's get that caliper bracket installed. Slide it right into position. We'll start in both of our 14mm headed bolts. Once they're each started, we can snug them up. Then we'll torque each of them to 41 foot-pounds. Now it's going to be time to install our brake pads. You want to make sure that you have one of the pads that has the wear indicator on it. Now that pad is going to be the inboard pad. We want that tab to be facing down. Go ahead and slide that right in. Now we'll take one of the pads that does not have the wear indicator on it. Slide that into position on the opposite side of the rotor. Now in your kit, you're going to notice it also came with this metal clip right here. I'm going to pop that out using my small pry bar. For this, we're going to pop it out coming from the back side right here. You just push it to one side and then just give it a loving bonk to drive it through. Now we can install the new tin. Let's just take that. We're going to put it right in between the caliper here. Now I'm going to press it up and in to lock it. Make sure it's centered. And now we can go ahead and put the caliper up and onto the caliper bracket. Let's grab our two caliper slider bolts. Start each of these in. Once they're each started, you can bottom them out, and then we'll torque each of these to 16 foot-pounds. We're getting to the point that we're going to put the wheel on, but before we do, just give everything a double check. You want to make sure you torqued everything for the caliper, and of course, put back in the bolts if you had removed any, and the rubber plug. our bolts and plug was missing. Let's get the wheel back up on here. Now we can start on all 5 of our lug nuts. We'll tighten them up, get the wheel back on the ground, and then torque each of them to 80 foot-pounds. Torqued. Okay friends, we got the car back together. What's left to do now? Now you're going to want to do the exact same thing on the other side of the vehicle. After that, go ahead and make sure you pump up that brake pedal till it's nice and firm. Take it for a road test. Also, you want to make sure that you test that emergency brake, make sure it holds the vehicle and it isn't making noise while you're driving. Thanks for watching.